Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And we're back for another episode of Joe on Joe Illustrated. Today we're doing G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 86. If you're a new listener to this show, Joe on Joe is a podcast where I, your host, Joe Slepsky, first we watched every episode of The Real American Hero in sequential order. I'm getting visited by my dogs right now, if you could hear their jangling. And now we're going through the comic book, issue by issue, page by page, panel by panel, in excruciating detail. Like, not a review, not like, oh, I like it, but like this issue, this panel, this page. And I love it. I love doing it. I've heard from a lot of listeners out there. I think you guys enjoy it. I hope you do. The numbers are saying that you do, so I appreciate it. And we're growing all the time, and it's just an exciting time to be a Joe fan. Of course, if you are out there, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me at Joe on Joe Pod. That is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Follow me in all those places. Reach out, send a note to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. I heard from our friend Yorktown Joe just the other day. He was talking about the last episode where the title of it, this is great insight, I didn't catch this, SFX, sound effects. My brain is going like special effects, but that's actually just FX, which doesn't make any sense. However, I think he's right. So I think the title of last issue being SFX really stands for sound effects. And for the record, all of my knowledge of these acronyms is entirely based on the film series FX. Not even the channel FX, but the what was it? Brian, the guy from Brian, what's his name? Who was in Cocktail with Tom Cruise, where he was the special effects guy, and he had to stop a murder or something like that, and he had to fake a bunch of stuff. That was a big hit, and then they did FX2, and I think it was like really bad, and then that killed that franchise. Anyway, so that's awesome. So, and I heard from Yorktown Joe, so thanks a lot, Yorktown Joe. Shout out to you, my friend. Also want to shout out to our great sponsors, the Movie and a Meal podcast. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts, and you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie, it's about not two movies, it's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. Yeah, give them a listen, guys. They're a great fun pod, especially if you love movies and entertainment. I think podcasts and like podcasts about movies is a real sweet spot for me. Like, I really enjoy them. And I don't know why. I don't know why that's like that genre. Like podcasts about books. I don't, as I dig into my own comic book podcast about books, like I don't find myself listening to a ton of them. But I do, I love not almost any, because that's not true, but I do love podcasts about movies. Which is funny because there's a connection this week in our You Were Saying section that does tie into one of my favorite podcasts about movies. And so, you know what, we might as well get into it, guys. If you guys remember, You Were Saying, it's our section where we look at the comics and the movies that were on sale or in the theaters or what have you the same time that the book is that we're talking about. And we've taken about 6 months off from dealing with the films because I had to give it some time to catch up. And what does that mean? That means is there's something called the cover date. Again, I've been over this, but you know, if you're a new listener, here it is. The cover date on your comic book is not actually the release date of the book. This goes back generations. That's the off sale date. That was the book that was telling people at your 7-Elevens or your newsstands of the world, when you hit, in this case, May of 1989, when you hit May, take this book off of your shelf. Because now it's 5 to 6 months past the release date. So when you look back historically, books that all have the May of 89 stamp on them, which this one certainly does, those books were all released together. They just weren't released in May of 89. They actually were released, in this case, January of 89. And the reason we were able to just sync that up is one of the references to a Halloween issue. A couple months back, the book referenced Halloween, so that was able to say, okay, that was released in October of 88. So I've been pausing on doing the movies until we got caught up. So, happy to announce, officially, we're back.
You were saying
to full form with G.I. Joe 86, which was released in January of 1989. And with all that ado out of the way, we're going to jump into the movies that were on the shelf. And the reason I tied in with Mother Movie Podcast is The January Man, with Kevin Kline, Susan Sarandon, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, Harvey Keitel, Danny Aiello, Rod Steiger, Alan Rickman, Faye Grant. All those names are huge. You're thinking, how can that be a terrible movie? And it is a mess of a movie. I've never been able to sit through it. I have tried to watch it. It is, I think it's on HBO right now. And it was just recently done on How Did This Get Made? So that's my connection to movie podcasts that I do enjoy. But The January Man was released in January of 1989 on January 13th, the same day as Gleaming the Cube, the Christian Slater skater movie, which to this day I'm pretty sure I've never seen. Don't really care for that. Deep Star 6, which is like it's got like an underwater it's like an underwater exploration movie. I think I've seen that. It's got Greg Evigan from Greg Evigan from BJ and the Bear fame and My Two Dads fame. Miguel Ferrer. I don't think it's very good. It's from Carol Co. and TriStar, so it's not exactly canon film level, but it's not exactly top tier level. But on this date was also January 13th was The Experts, which I know is not very good. John Travolta, Ari Gross, Kelly Preston, Deborah Foreman from Valley Girl fame, who's amazing. James Keach. I was thinking Stacy Keach. I've seen this movie a jillion times. Have not seen it in probably 35 years, but this movie was on HBO a million times. It's when John Travolta and Ari Gross, they are kidnapped, and they are either kidnapped or they, again, long time since I've seen it, but basically they get duped into training Russians how to be American. And it's a big Cold War thing. And so they have to hip up this fake American town. And I think it was that they were like drugged and flown there, like to Russia. And they wake up and they don't realize that they're not actually in America anymore. And they're in a replica of America being run by these Russians. And their job is to like teach them how to blend in, and be hip Americans and stuff. I've not seen this movie in forever, but I do remember liking it. It's probably terrible, but that movie was on HBO 5 million times. And then on it's weird. January, literally only two weeks had opening movies. The 13th, and then they needed to leave room from The Experts to go to January 27th. They had to give it a 2-week window, and nothing good. Cohen and Tate. I don't even know what the Roy Scheider film. parents, physical evidence, and Three Fugitives. I've seen Three Fugitives relatively recently. It's a very charming movie. It's not great, but it is a very charming movie. Nick Nolte, Martin Short. It's a bank robbery, and there's a little girl in the mix. And it's, you know, it's one of those kind of charming, you know, like fatherhood, be a better dad kind of movies wrapped around a bank robbery, if my memory serves. But yeah, so January 89, not a great way to start off what would be one of the greatest years of film history.
You were saying?
I was saying. So now we're going to go over to DC Comics. And we are going to pick up with Adventures of Superman, number 454. Now, this is Superman on an alien planet, and what's fun about this cover is, I think it's a Kerry Gamble, maybe Kerry Gamble, Jerry Ordway cover. Is for some reason they decided to draw the Thing's hands all over Superman. He's basically being groped by a bunch of weird aliens, and one of them is the Thing's orange rocky hands. I'm assuming the other aliens are very likely referencing other alien species. I don't see anything that sticks out any more than the Thing's hands, but the Thing's hands are definitely on the cover of Superman. Remember, this is his Exile in Space era. Many Deaths of the Batman continues. It actually starts, rather. This is the John Byrne 3-issue storyline where people in Batman costumes are being found dead all over Gotham. Blasters Special, Volume 1, Number 1. This is a one-shot. This was a lot of fun. This spun out of the Invasion series. It's written by Peter David. Does not get a lot of love. It basically says the premise of Snapper Carr, who had been a, quote, mascot for the JLA for decades at this point. They finally gave him superpowers, and he had a teleportation. So when he snapped his fingers, because he was Snapper Carr, he could teleport stuff. And during Invasion, he had found himself in a prison with a bunch of other people. So this was an attempt to give Snapper an actual superhero adventure career, and he teamed up with a bunch of aliens to become the Blasters. The idea never really went anywhere. Probably just wasn't picked up by any other writers. I believe it eventually they found their way into the Legion book, which I've talked about here before. I'm pretty sure this was picked up somewhat in there, but it never really went anywhere. But I'm all for Snapper Carr. I think he's a fun, stupid, like he's the Rick Jones of the DC universe completely. And Rick Jones, Snapper was there before Rick Jones. So to have Peter David kind of give that love to Snapper, which certainly he gave all that love to Rick Jones when he does the Hulk stuff, I think was it was nice. It was a nice parallel. So the Blasters Special, you can totally find this pretty cheap on the back issues, but it's probably not very common. But I don't think there's a lot of demand for it either, so you might have to dig it out. It might have been reprinted in the Invasion collection that they put out. If it's ever going to be reprinted, I imagine it's only going to be reprinted there. Yeah. So Legion Volume 1, Number 4. It's got Lobo. Welcome Lobo to the Legion, and he's holding a gun to the Durlin's head. And we are just a couple issues away from the Durlin swapping out with FaZe/Phantom Girl, and the Durlin becoming RJ Brand. Spoiler alert for any of you Legion heads out there. Secret Origins, number 40. It's an all gorilla issue. It's Gorilla Grodd, Kongorilla, Detective Chimp, 3 apes. 3 apes 3. Why is this chimp crying? We have a crying Detective Chimp on the cover. If you've not followed the career of Detective Chimp, he has had a renaissance. It's a chimpassance in the last 10 years, I'd say. Starting with the not Secret Six, the Shadow Pact stuff, which was right around the Infinite Crisis crossover. They brought back Detective Chimp, and the idea of a super smart, kind of a drunk chimp who's really good at solving crimes, sign me up. I'm all for it. And so he was with Shadow Pact for a long time, and he hangs out at like in all the magical books, like Hellblazer and Zatanna and things like that. Chimp always shows up, and he's part of Dark. I believe he's part of Justice League Dark. Anyway, Detective Chimp's awesome. And there's the old adage in comics: you put a monkey on a cover, and it always sells like 20% better. I'm with you on that. Absolutely with you on that. Let's see here. Ooh, V for Vendetta's just got a couple more issues left. They're in issue number 10. And yeah, so that's it for DC Comics.
You were saying?
Now over at Marvel Comics, man, they're publishing UK Alf, and Alf's having an Alpha-sance is what's going on. An Amazing Spider-Man 315 Todd McFarlane drawing Hydro Man with Venom on the cover. This is a fun issue. This issue with the appearance of Venom's always is gone up over and over. I remember when the second new Spider-Man movie came out, so Far From Home, there was that water creature. So this book shot up the charts because everyone assumed that it was Hydro Man. Me too, for the record. Damage Control #1. I love Damage Control. What a great series. What a great concept. Dwayne McDuffie. They used Damage Control, speaking of Spider-Man, they used him in Spider-Man Homecoming. I hope that they expand on that and expound on it because it's rife for a TV show. DC did that TV show, Powers? Where it was basically Damage Control. It was the DC version of Damage Control. A very fun show with, Fire made a guest appearance on it. What's his name from Firefly? He's a fun actor. Redhead. He was in Dodgeball. Anyway, he played like Bruce Wayne's cousin, and it was a lot of fun. That show died way too early. What was it? Unpowered? Depowered? Powerless? I forget what that called. But anyway, good show. Very much out of the Damage Control playbook. Damage Control is really great. It's a property DC's not doing enough with. I wonder if there's some ownership rights and they just don't want to pay the McDuffie estate, which is a shame if that's why they're not exploiting it, because it's a great property. All right. Incredible Hulk versus Galorian. Peter David's great at taking a nothing kind of character like Galorian and doing a fun book around it. So I'm all for it, but it was not a great character. Let's see. Just this John Byrne cover for Marvel Comics Presents 18, I've always enjoyed. It's Santa Claus, and the front of Marvel Comics always did wraparound covers. Like the whole run was always wraparounds, and if not a wraparound, it was just a two-sided cover. So early on, it was all wraparounds. Then it became two-sided and flipped. So half the book was flipped, so that it would be like Ghost Rider on one side and Wolverine on the other, something like that. This one's fun because it's Santa's bag, so it looks like there's a She-Hulk doll and a book about Cyclops and a comic book from Black Panther. And these are all the characters that actually have stories on the inside, and then the other side is Santa Claus. So that's always fun. Look like Mike Mignola doing the cover for Marvel Comics Presents 20. Parallel Lives, which is the Marvel graphic novel 46. They did 46 graphic novels at this point. This is Dr. Octopus and Mary Jane. So this is after Spider-Man had been married. My recollection on this one is they used this to show that MJ kind of knew who Spider-Man was long before he kind of outed himself to her, and that her life, the idea of like she was living her, it's giving more depth to her and Peter's relationship, stuff that they never did in the comic, to show that she knew all along, and or at least longer than he thought she knew, and how his life as Peter was affecting her without him even realizing. Though it's a pretty good graphic novel. It's been quite a while since I've read it, but pretty solid. Speaking of She-Hulk and John Byrne, sensational She-Hulk #1. What a great run. What a fabulous run. Speaking of taking B-level characters, and I'm not even talking about She-Hulk, although certainly you would say at the time she was B-level. It's all of her surrounding cast. It's stuff like US-1, the trucker, the blonde Phantom. Shows that like Byrne pulled from the depths of Marvel to revisit with the She-Hulk stuff. And, his pencils were never more lush. Like, just really, really great stuff. It's been reprinted in an omnibus because he did like the first, I'll say 15 issues, maybe first 2 years worth of She-Hulk. And then he had a bit of a falling out, I'm understanding. And so he just moved on. But then he came back around issue mid-40s and he finished up the series. So with like another 20 issues or so. So it's enough for a good solid omnibus, and it kind of omits the stuff in the middle, which, I've read it. It's okay. It's omittable. But the regular stuff he did with it was great, especially that he used US-1, the trucker, and Zemnu the Titan to great effect. He brought the Skrulls, but he brought the Circus of, which we'll see in the future months, the Circus of Crime, and a lot of really, really strong stuff out of the sensational She-Hulk series. I liked it a lot. Uncanny X-Men 244, First Jubilee. That's right, guys. The kid from the mall who has it all. Oh, this is a great book. Uncanny X-Men Madness and Murder World. So we were talking about Paragon Software, and we were talking about what was it, the Spider-Man Captain America video game. This was the other video game. This was Madness and Murder World #1. So that's funny. This must have came out that same right around the same time, the game from Paragon Software. I literally just ran across this in my collection. I was doing some filing, and I saw this book. It's in remarkably good shape for having been kept in like my computer drawer for years. Even though I had a comic collection, my brain was like, I need to keep this with my, even though it's a straight up comic book, it's not a computer manual at all. I needed to keep this with my computer manuals, not with my comic books. It wasn't for like decades later that I was like, I'm just going to lose this. It's going to get destroyed. It's in remarkably good shape. Yeah, this was a fun game. This was another side scroller. Yeah. And you were the X-Men, and it was that great era of Wolverine, Cyclops, Dazzler, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and you travel through. It's Magneto and Arcade team up, and you just fight robots, and it's a great like side scroller punch 'em up. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know a lot of people that have played both of those games. There was also another Spider-Man game that that was on PC that I know a lot of people never played. And it was a whole heck of a lot of fun. That one didn't have a comic crossover, but it was called just Spider-Man, and it used McFarlane art on the box. And I was just mad for all this stuff. Anytime they put out anything computer stuff, I was mad about learning. I was just crazy for it. And then if you throw some comic book guys on it, I was like, I need to figure out how to get that to work on my PC. You know, like a screensaver or a whatever. So yeah. So there you go. And that's it for Marvel Comics.
You were saying?
And that's it for You Were Saying. So I appreciate it and I enjoy it. That's a lot of good stuff on the shelf the same month as G.I. Joe number 86, featuring the return of, just a guy named Joe.
Now, mass is ready.
So let's take a look. The special 25th anniversary cover. It's got nice, I like the silver inks on the cover. Makes it feel proud, and it definitely makes it stand out it's got a, like a black and silver bracket around it. So for sure, this issue pops. This cover pops. It's Ron Wagner, then Bob McLeod cover. You've got Hawk, Stalker, Shockwave, and is it Lightfoot staring in like kind of in a shock at a dude who is in seemingly like dressed like greens, like issue greens. And he's saying, you don't recognize me, do you? I'm just another guy named Joe. Now, as a child, 14-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid at the time, I didn't know, like I knew there was a line of G.I. Joes, but I didn't know anything about them. I knew it was just, there was a Barbie doll-esque version of this stuff that I had zero history with. So when I saw this, it wasn't a tip to me. But knowing that, if I'm an adult, I get this. This is exciting. Especially because it's got at the bottom of it, it's got the 1963 to 1988 celebrating 25th anniversary. So as an adult, or someone, if I'm approaching this with knowledge of this, the original toy line, this cover would pop. I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're folding. This would have been huge for me. Having said that, I was still on it enough to be like, there's something here. I don't know what this stuff he's referencing, but I still got it once I was done with the book. But like the significance of it, I don't think I had at the time. But I think it's done really, really well.
Yo, Joe!
It's called Not Fade Away. And we start with a literal bang. We are in the, is that the Chrysler building? Yes, it's the Chrysler building, and you immediately know what it is because it's got those triangular brocades or whatever the name of it is, but those triangular triangles that are at the top of the building. That's in this picture, so it tells you right away. And they don't name it. I'm assuming they don't name it for legal purposes because probably the lawyers were like, let's not tell the world that there's A, a secret government agency operating out of the Chrysler building, and B, let's not show terrorists attacking the Chrysler building, specifically naming it the Chrysler building. You could do it with, like, the Cobra consulate, but I'm assuming there was something in Marvel Legal saying, let's peel back a little bit, Larry. Let's peel back. So high atop a famed New York City landmark, as the page says, we start with what should be a huge tip-off for the rest of the book. This is a huge spoiler on the first page if you're paying attention. There is a Cobra, or rather a Destro Iron Grenadier, hanging out the window, and he is holding Scrap Iron's missile launcher. If you know your Joe toys, you're looking at this going, why? That is Scrap Iron's missile launcher. Why is that Iron Grenadier using it? It's a great tip-off, very subtle. One I didn't even notice on my first pass through. I just thought, oh yeah, the Iron Grenadier shooting a missile at the Joe Tomahawk. You see Tomahawk in the distance. So it's really cool, and it's at a lovely, really nice steep angle that Marshall Rogers put it in. Like, this is a really nice perspective work on this. Of course, it's scripted by Larry Hama. Marshall Rogers pencils. Welcome back, Marshall. It's always great to see his work on here. He really does make things look like action figures come to life. Randy Emberlin on inks, Rick Parker lettering, Bob Sharon on colors, Bobby Chase editor, Tom DeFalco, editor-in-chief.
Yo, Joe!
And the Tomahawk swerves away from the missile. We've got Lift Ticket at the helm, Lady J sitting next to him, and their worry is that any of their guys aren't going to fall out the open doors of the Tomahawk, and that's a good word because no one's strapped in. And was it Repeater? Oh, I'm sorry, and it's Muskrat on the cover, not Lightfoot. It's Muskrat on the cover. Lightfoot's the other guy. Lightfoot's the mine detector guy. So Repeater's about to fall out the window. We've got Shockwave, Stalker's there, Lightfoot's there too. So he's actually buckled in, which makes sense. And then that must be General Hawk. He's kind of like halfway off. He's also getting thrown. So everyone's having their bridge of the Enterprise moment of getting tossed around. And meanwhile, the Gatling gun on the front of the Tomahawk unloads. And it's all drawn absolutely as it looks on the toy, which is one of Marshall Rogers' really, really great strengths. It's really fabulous. And now let's think about what they're doing. Another reason why they probably don't want to call it the Chrysler Building. G.I. Joe just opened fire on the Chrysler Building, everybody. G.I. Joe opened fire on not only U.S. soil, but on the Chrysler Building. And Repeater gets in on the action. And everyone's shooting at everybody on the Chrysler Building. It's great. Now we get our first little bit of some lingo here, and there's another tip though. This is great. So this is an Iron Grenadier, and there's a bunch of Iron Grenadiers that they're shooting at, right? And in the bottom panel, Iron Grenadier calling for someone called C.C. Ryder, and he's calling himself. This is Mean Ol' Frisco. The Joes have arrived sooner than expected. And so there's a lot to unpack here. And one of the other tip-offs of this moment is he is using the camera from the Televiper. You know, that bubble camera that reads out the words sometimes in reverse. He's got a bubble camera of a Televiper, presumably showing them that the Joes have arrived. So that's a tip. What could it all mean?
Yo, Joe!
So now the Joes are repelling in another nice perspective shot. Marshall Rogers is doing really nice work here with showing the angles and really getting some excitement out of this, of an already exciting moment. He's really milking it. So now we have a low angle view of the underside of Tomahawk as the guys rappel down, still shooting at the Chrysler Building. And they've been told that some of Destro's Iron Grenadiers are attacking a secret government installation in this skyscraper, not naming it. And, they're just firing. And now the Joes are landing above the Grenadiers. That's important here. So the Joes have gone higher than them. and they're actually in the top, one of those top triangular shapes. It's like an open window. There's a bunch of tourists that are in there, so the cops are trying to manage it and placate it and stuff like that.
Yo, Joe!
So here we are, and General Hawk meets for the very first time in an epic panel, first appearance of Joe Colton. Hawk says, "I'm Hawk, and this is part of the G.I. Joe team. Have I met you before? You look familiar." And this bearded gentleman in a blue military jacket says, "I'm just another guy named Joe. I'm head honcho of security around here." And again, we get this nice 3/4 page splash, again using really, really great perspective to give us these high angle shots and really give the impression of we're in a skyscraper. That's what I like so far. The first 3 pages is just by placing the camera where Marshall has placed it, he's reminding us that we are in an elevated position. You know, we're on a skyscraper. Everything is going to be taller, bigger. You know, like when you look down from a skyscraper and you get that sense of vertigo. He's accomplishing that literally on every single page so far. He's accomplished that sense of vertigo simply by putting the camera at that extreme angle. And when he does this, we see this, we don't exactly know what it is, but it's a giant machine. And it's a part of the SDI program, which is that Star Wars missile defense program. And we also meet for the first time, very low on the page, someone, she says they can just call me Jane. We don't stand on formality around here. So now we met G.I. Joe and G.I. Jane.
Yo, Joe!
And she says, she explains it a little bit. She says she thinks Joe was actually a little hasty in calling for help. This facility was designed with utmost security in mind. We're isolated at the top of, quote, this building, and the only entrance is hidden in a phony ad agency staffed by agents. They have a dead floor between them and the rest of the buildings filled with ballistic fiberglass foam, and the doors are all 2-foot thick laminated steel vault doors with molybdenum locking lugs, and those are the same steel. That's the same steel used in Destro's helmet. Let's all not forget that. And basically, they say we're safe from these these Destro goons that are attacking. And we're getting a lot of information of what it is and what this building is designed to do. It's housing a clean particle beam that the rapid pulse counteracts energy dissipation in the atmosphere. So it's just a high burst laser, and each pulse burns a hole through the air for the next pulse. So they can put a lot of energy on the target, no matter where it is in this hemisphere, by bouncing it off of a satellite above. This whole concept and this installation ends up coming into it's like the pit. It comes back over and over and over again over the years. I think they've used it recently, if memory's serving. So pay attention to this too. The fact that G.I. Joe is a laser in the Chrysler building does not go away.
Yo, Joe!
And we see 3 floors down. She mentioned that there's a staff of DOA agents that are guarding that fake business, and we see these are the agents. They're engaged in a firefight with the Destro Iron Grenadiers, and again we see another Grenadier holding that camera lens, calling CC Ryder, "This is mean old Frisco," and using the Cobra Televiper machine. So again, another bit of mystery. And now we see who he's talking to. And he's talking to, there's a guy, we see the back of his head. He's looking at a series of cameras. And he's talking to a dude who's standing at the window. And then out the window, you see the Chrysler building next. And you also see that there's a telescope they've been looking through too. So these 2 dudes, whoever they are monitoring the things going on at the Chrysler building.
Yo, Joe!
Now we start digging into this giant vault-like structure. So this huge metal door is open, and everyone comes through, and and we see more of this laser, just how much this laser is integrated, and it's a lot. Like, there's a lot. This is a big structure. And while Joe and Jane are convinced that no one can get through it, Lightfoot basically takes one look at the situation and says, the fact that the door opens inwards is, in his words, no good to the max. It may have a lot of locking lugs, but that means it has a lot of space for them to retract into. Someone who knew what he was doing with shaped charges could blow this door without breaking a sweat. So that's great insight. I love it. I love that when a Joe expert comes in and uses his expertise to be like, nope, here's the lowdown.
Yo, Joe!
John Elway is still embarrassing this kid with the giant glasses for John Elway's quarterback. That's nice to see. So now we see, as per Lightfoot's prediction, the Grenadiers they've beaten the DOA, and so now they're bringing in some C4 explosives. And they're using really great, I'm assuming accurate descriptions, talking about a girth hitch connection on the det cord, branch lines to the main, blah, blah, blah. So they're setting up a bunch of C4, and what's really kind of cool is they're setting up a swimming, they're calling it a swimming pool section, which is they're going to fill the door with water. So they're setting up a like a U-shaped barrier around the door. Then they're going to fill that with water. So when the detonation explodes, the water's going to not only absorb it, but force the pressure back towards the door. So it's going to increase the amount of pressure on that door, which is going to let them bust in easy. It's a really cool idea. I love the execution of it. I have a question about it when we get to it, but that's kind of neat. And Larry's doing here what he does best in G.I. Joe, which one of the things I love about it is he walks you through stuff like this step by step. They don't just, a lot of comics or a lot of, superhero stuff, especially these days, they'll be like, we just got to blow the door, and then it'll be blown, and you'll just see a guy like with a smoking gun and be like, yeah, we did it. And occasionally that happens here too, but when G.I. Joe is really, really great at taking its time and going step by step, showing you how they would do it in a military precision, military way. Also, if you look closely at this top panel, the backpack on the main Iron Grenadier should look very familiar. In fact, they all have different backpacks, and I'm sure they are all accurate to stuff that happens later in the book. So that's a real tip. There's another real tip. Take a look.
Yo, Joe!
Oh boy, Stan Lee. A one-time offer from Marvel Addicts. Stan Lee wants you to buy the Ultimate Marvel Collectibles, 2 exclusive VHS videos, and a limited edition 25th anniversary poster. What? The illustrated How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way video and the X-Men pilot, Pride of the X-Men. I think I had this. I think I used to have. I don't think I got it through this though. I'm pretty sure I did not. But it was out of Elk Grove, Illinois. That's funny. If I had figured that out, I probably would be like, Mom, can we drive there to this P.O. box in Elk Grove, Illinois? But let's see, for only 30, well, that's kind of a lot of money. I gotta be honest. That's kind of a lot of money. $33. You'd get both. No, it's not, because you get an autographed anniversary poster, both videos, and it's the video of How to Draw Comics Marvel. I know I've seen that. I'm trying to think where I would have seen that, because I don't have that. I would have saved that VHS. I don't have that. And then I know I had Pride of the X-Men on a different type of VHS. Anyway, all of this from New World Video. Cassettes available in VHS only. So all you Betamax players, you're SOL. Please allow 3 to 4 weeks for delivery. So you could have gotten all of this for $35.90. That's a steal. And man, Stan's hair has never looked faker. Go for it. 2 floors down. Now we've got SWAT team from New York SWAT team, NYPD. They've made their way up. So now where the Grenadiers were previously shooting upwards at those other soldiers, at the DOA agents, they're now once again shooting downwards at the NYPD. So they're caught in their own trap is what's happening here. And one of the cops says, what we may be thinking is, how are these bozos expecting to get away from the top of this building? And we're seeing there's a bunch of crates being lowered through the elevator, or actually up the elevator shaft. So someone down below is sending these crates up the elevator shaft. I don't think we actually ever see those people, but that's great though. There's a separate team that's working with them that's not involved in the firefight. I don't know if we actually ever see them, but they're sending crates up to help these Iron Grenadiers.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Lightfoot diagnoses what's happening. He hears this water gurgling. He says they're using a water dam to direct the blast towards the door. Got about 5 minutes tops. So everyone's freaking out. G.I. Joe, or Joe Colton, says, Jane, you better get yourself upstairs. Ride herd on those technoids. Those nerds. He doesn't want those nerds to panic with all that expensive hardware. And she's like, you're absolutely right. Bunch of nerds. Check out the illustrations on this page. This is very, Muskrat, that is very much an action figure come to life. I really like it. I like this. This is indicative of why I like Marshall Rogers penciling this stuff. He really gives them that feel of these are toys in a real world. Muskrat is really indicative of that. It looks great.
Yo, Joe!
Fun panel, tells you everything you need to know. This would be a fun page to own. You got this water tank set up by the door. Cut to the guys behind it. Fire in the hole. Plunger goes down. And you just get this giant explosion, this giant boom at the bottom of the page. Awesome. We're also getting a closer look at the backpack that the one Iron Grenadier is wearing. It's a really distinctive backpack.
Yo, Joe!
And we get the effect on the other side of the door. The door gets blasted off the hinges. So I kind of wanted to see the effects of the water, like does it just flood in the, well, oh no, you know what? No, I take it all back. It's there. When I first read this, I didn't see it, but I'm seeing it now. All this smoke, that's not smoke, that's steam. That's the water being vaporized by the explosion, which is what I wanted to see. My brain was registering it just as normal smoke, but if you look closely, it's coming from the ground. It's not coming like from the blast. It's not blast smoke. It is steam. It's the water evaporating. That's awesome. That's fantastic. The Joes are all deaf from the explosion. They're also getting shot at. Muskrat takes a bullet. And on the next page,
Yo, Joe!
Repeater takes a bullet. These new Joes are just pincushions. Stop it. Now we're going to cut to across town. These two dudes are chatting. They're still in shadows. And the guy near the window, who's got some weird pointy things coming off the side of his head, says, all our troops are wearing Iron Grenadier helmets with integral gas masks, right? The guy says. The other guy at the computer desk says, that's right. And he's talking to the guy who's called Mean Ol' Frisco. He says, this is CC Ryder. Gas him. And says, you heard the man, give him the riot gas.
Yo, Joe!
So now, Mean Ol' Frisco comes in the door and he uses this gun that we see here in this second panel. Muskrat says, I could have sworn he was using Toxo Viper equipment. And they're shooting riot gas, tear gas at him. Which you can see in the third panel. Stalker's crying. He's either once again sad that he left Snake Eyes in wounded, or he's just crying because he's got tear gas. And they're all getting gassed out. Some of them are hit. The Cobra's very competent. The Iron Grenadiers are very competent on this mission. They're really showing up well. The Joes are really trapped. They're getting further and further trapped into this compound. And they still don't understand what's happening here. They think they're there to steal this laser. Like the one, I think it's Colton, is saying, it took days to get the laser even up here, piece by piece.
Yo, Joe!
And Hawk's not going to take any chances. He's just going to destroy the laser. Which, once again, we're just going to set charges in the top of the Chrysler building. And Joe Colton is trying to figure it all out. By the way, this whole time, the Joes have been waiting for other Joes. They've got some reinforcements on the way. But this was the first helicopter that was closest. So they're 8 minutes away. And it's Lady J flying shotgun again with lift ticket. They're standing by in the Tomahawk as the other Joes are on their way. So they're kind of like hovering outside, keeping an eye on things. And which is good because Lady J notices that something very small and very fast is heading their way.
Yo, Joe!
Just like that plane overhead. And Colton gets it. Says the bad guys don't need to capture the laser at all. All they need are the operating program disks from the computer, and they're all downstairs with the bad guys. So the place where the Joes have evacuated, that's where Cobra's at. Or, sorry, the Iron Grenadiers are at, which we don't have to keep up that ruse anymore, because very quickly we look downstairs and it is Cobra. Totally Cobra. And they're all wearing phony Iron Grenadier suits. And as the one Televiper says, it's a neat way to pay back Destro for raiding the Picatinny arsenal in Cobra suits. Remember that from a couple issues back? This is awesome. This is a great payback. I love this plan. This is great, and they competently do it. And we got Firefly here. It was his backpack that was, pretty recognizable earlier on, and says the one Viper says they've got the discs. They hand it to him. Basically, it's Televiper's. What kind of, is that a Techno Viper? Hold on. Yeah, Televiper's, Techno Viper's, Firefly, and we'll see who else shows up.
Yo, Joe!
Now the Joes have to repel because they're above them. They've been sealed in. So now the Joes have to once again repel out the window to go from below them. And we get another great Marshall Rogers perspective shot here. So now reminding us that we're at the very top of a very tall skyscraper. The Joes have to hit the floor below the dead space being that security floor, and fight their way back up. And they're led by Joe Colton. So now the Cobra's in their full Viper gears. Or, they're surprised. How did they get below us? That kind of a thing. And Firefly takes those discs, which is hilarious because they are drawn to be like 5 1/4 floppies. That's awesome. Got it. Yeah, that was a day. And he holds it out in this really, really long pole with a hook. There's a hook in the bag. And he holds it out the window.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, New England Comics. Let's take a peek here. What do we got? They've got some new DC comics they want you to pay attention to. Oh, you can get Invasion 1 through 3 for $3. Yeah, remember New England was, if memory was serving me, they had the newer stuff. Though they had some classic X-Men, like X-Men 96 through 99 you could get for $28. X-Men 101 you could only got them for $35. Man, we were just selling them at Golden Apple. We just got a kind of a beat up copy. I think we sold for like $600-700. That's our first Phoenix. That's a good book. G.I. Joe #1 at the time, going for $20. It stayed at $20. I'm not even kidding, for like 20 years. It stayed at $20 forever. And it's only recently popped up. That's crazy. And let's see, 21. Yeah, they're just $15, $12. Get them early G.I. Joes, baby. Oh, they're offering grab eggs, comic supplies. Go to New England Comics, guys. Get in a time machine. Go get some good books for cheap.
Yo, Joe!
So now a Cobra drone missile comes shooting overhead, and it grabs that bag off the pole that Firefly was holding out. And now we see across town, CC Ryder, of course, was Cobra Commander. And the drone picked it up. And the other guy at the window was, of course, Dr. Mindbender. It was his mustache that was making those weird pokey things out the side of his face. And Mindbender says, I told you this would work, Cobra Commander. He hates it when he's right. But they're setting up I believe what they're setting up is like a net to catch the rocket that's gonna, that's gonna have the discs in it. What it looks like is one of those pitchback machines. By machine, I mean net on springs that you would play pitch and catch with in the backyard. It was set at an angle and it had a little box in the middle. If you threw it in the box, it would basically bounce right back at you. If you missed it, you'd have to go chase after the ball. Or if you hit it at an angle, the ball would bounce anywhere. I had one of those. I used to play it all the time because I was a lonely guy. No, actually, I had terrible aim is the problem. I had terrible baseball aim. I played baseball my whole life. I never really got the hang of throwing a ball accurately in the same 20 yards. I never really got the hang of doing that repeatedly very well. I played outfield, so I would just chuck it as hard as I could from the outfield somewhere, but like to throw from like shortstop to first base. Oh, terrible. And shout out to my boy Jeff if you're listening. He would, we played Little League our whole life, and he was always the only guy that would play catch with me because inevitably my throws would just go wildly. It was like, was it Chuck Knobloch was the first baseman that couldn't figure it out? Like the yips. I had that, and I never, ever got over it. I could never accurately throw a baseball very well, even though I played it for 2 decades. Yeah, it's hilarious. Loser.
Yo, Joe!
But the Joes are, they're just in a firefight, and they're slowly making their way. They're making their way through these Vipers. It's funny. It doesn't look like scrap iron's with them. Even, the Vipers, and the red and the blue makes you think scrap iron, and they use one of scrap iron's missiles, but I don't see scrap iron as part of this infiltration team. It looks like Firefly is doing the only, the leadership on it. And let's see here. I'll get a phone call from Washington, D.C. Oh my God, someone's upset that we're talking all the G.I. Joe secrets here. So Cobra busts out these gyrocopters, which were toys at the time. So that's a nice toy in. And that's what was coming up the elevator shaft. And so there's all these empty boxes that had these tiny gyrocopters. So all the Cobras are strapped into them, and they're flying. There's a dozen of them flying over New York City, and every Cobra gets away. This is awesome. And Joe Colton figures out that there must have been a remote-controlled drone that picked up the discs. And they can stop them, but now they need to get back up to the laser chamber.
Yo, Joe!
This whole adventure is, 1, a lot of fun. 2, it is, it's very chess piecey. It is very, we're die-hardy too. We're trapped in this building, and there's these multiple floors of action, and all the players are navigating, going from one floor to the other floor, and they storytellers do a fabulous job of keeping us track of where they're at. This floor has been sealed off now, that Joe's got to break into it, and so on and so forth. It's really nice. So now the Joes are having to break back into their own operation in order to start the laser. And we see it here. One of the panels on the side of the Chrysler building kind of slides open. And we see, someone asks, can you hit something this close to the laser? And she says, if we needed to, we could hit something on the laser. That's how accurate this weapon is. So Cobra and Mindbender, CC, or Fred Mander, rather, and Mindbender, they're anticipating the arrival of the drone shortly.
Yo, Joe!
And Lady Jane, not Lady Jane, I guess, but G.I. Jane, she's manning the computer, and Joe gives her, but they have a positive radar lock, and we see here, and this was, Hawk again asked the same question that someone else the previous page, can you really hit something that's that small, traveling that fast? And he says, Hawk, we can hit a smaller target traveling at Mach 2, 1,200 miles away. So here we go. And they're navigating in between buildings in New York. Like this is going to need to be super precision. And what's so fabulous about this page and the choices made in telling this, it's the culmination of this big blowout action thing. And the sound effects are so underplayed. It's delightful. After he shouts to do it, Jane presses the button, and it's a very small click, and it's a zip up to the laser. So this is now the Chrysler building shooting the laser up to this geosynchronous satellite that's going to reflect that laser back down. And you just get a little zip, and then there's just this slight boof over New York. And of course, Cobra Commander Fred Mander screaming "Arg!" And it's within arm's reach of Fred, right? But the quietness of these special effects is really, really just a great choice on their part.
Yo, Joe!
And now we wrap up as the debris, falls to the earth. Fred and Mindbender had ordered champagne to celebrate prematurely. And finally, the Joe reinforcements arrive, and it's, Roadblock and it's who's in the back, Outback and Tunnel Rat and Low Light and Lifeline and looks like Cross Country maybe and Flint. And they're shocked that the 6 of them handled this all by their lonesome. And Hawk says, we had some help from a real trooper, a real fighting man from head to toe. Let's say we make, quote, Joe here an honorary member of the G.I. Joe team. And this is where Jane spills his tea. That's hilarious. You're 25 years too late for that. Joe was the original G.I. Joe. And he says, before she went back to school for her doctorate in physics, Jane was our nurse. And the best line of the episode comes from Muskrat. And he says, golly, I always thought you were ... bigger, referencing the 12-inch size of the doll. I don't think I understood what this was until I got to this last page, because I knew that there conceptually was a bigger doll and all that stuff. I don't think this was my real first introduction to, oh, wait a minute, this is the guy that the old doll was. Oh, that all makes awesome sense. Yeah, I like it. I really, 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 really dig it. And before we wrap this up, we're going to go to the post box of the pit, because we've got some fun letters I want to get into. First of all, we got a letter here from Pablo Hidalgo out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Shout out, Pablo. We've got a letter here from Paul Hayes out of Woburn, Massachusetts. Anyone out there know Paul Hayes? We've got a Chris Rupenthal from England, from Matchborough, West Redditch, Worcestershire, however they pronounce that, England. That's exciting. We've got David Perkins out of Kingsport, Tennessee. And now we've got a shocking letter here from Todd Slingshot Yoho out of Raleigh, North Carolina. You guys might know Todd because he's asking for a Cobra fan club and a Cobra enlistment form. He's calling Billy a traitor and a goody two-shoes. He wants Zartan to, quote, put an arrow in his head or a dagger between his shoulder blades. So anyone wanting to join our fan club should please write to the address below, and he gives his address out of Raleigh, North Carolina. So Todd Slingshot Yoho, big fan of Cobra, looking to put together a Cobra fan club. I wonder if he ever did that. And we've got a letter from Richard Golland out of New York, Goland out of New York, New York. This is continuing the saga of Lone Wolf. We've got a letter here, unrelated. The letter itself is fine, but it's from Angel Wolfsbane Mays out of Morgan City, Louisiana. So Angel Wolfsbane Mays, are you out there? And the what I love is the pit, the editor, or Larry, or whoever wrote this, says, gee, is Wolfsbane a reaction to Lone Wolf? So I love that they're making the callback to our friend Lone Wolf from a couple episodes ago. Now, Chad Monroe, he gets real feisty here. Real quick, we also have a letter from Cindy Rancourt. Rancor. So shout out to her. If you guys know any of these people, let's give a shout out to him. But this is from Chad Monroe. He's got a little bee in his bonnet. He says, I recently read 79. It was pretty good. The ending was stupid, though, because no dog could survive being torn apart by a chainsaw. In the future, please write better endings to your radical comics. Oh, and fire Larry Hama. Wow. Chad Monroe, you're really stepping out and making an A of yourself here. First of all, do you want Junkyard to die? Like, is that your goal here? Because if so, get out. And also, you want to fire Larry Hama? Stop yourself. Chad Monroe, throw you out of the Cobra fan club that Todd Slingshot Yoho is apparently starting. And that's it, everybody. That's it for G.I. Joe number 86, celebrating 25 years of America's Greatest Soldier and, the greatest toy we've all ever collected. So I appreciate you all. Also, this week, reminder, there was a new Snake Eyes trailer, and that was exciting. I guest starred on the Comics and Pops channel, did a little trailer reaction. I love it. I think it looks great. I do think it looks a little bit like Snake Eyes Begins. Like, they're like, hey, kids, you love Batman Begins? You love Wolverine in a cage match? What about all that with Snake Eyes? But so far, so good. Shout out to Paul Galliano, who pointed out the India international trailer. That trailer is better than our trailer. They actually give some of the story away. It does sound like Cobra's the actual bad guys in it. Like, they have to stop. They're talking about stopping Cobra. I think they mentioned the word Joe's for the first time, which it was hard to hear. I played it a couple times. I wasn't for sure if they said it, but it actually gave a little bit of some of the plot of what they're up to. So, man, it's getting closer, and I'm getting more excited. And stay tuned. If you're listening this far into the show, hopefully you're a fan. Stay tuned. I think I'm going to try to put together a screening for SoCal Joe's sometime near launch date. So be on the lookout for more information on that. And hopefully we can all get together and watch Snake Eyes. That'll be a lot of fun. So with that, till next time, now you Joe. And Joeing is half the battle.